We now look at a mutual fund and something interesting around a mutual fund, which is something called as a fact sheet, which is given either by third-party rating agencies for mutual funds or the fund house itself. The fund house actually comes out with a monthly fact sheet that tells us about what are the various funds doing, what are the kind of compositions of the fund, who the fund manager is, how much money they manage, and so on and so forth. So we're going to look at all this as we go along. First bit first, we will look at how does SEBI basically ask. SEBI, remember, is the regulator, Securities Exchange Board of India. There is a risk profile of funds that SEBI has kind of asked mutual fund houses to give, and that's some sort of a color code that they have said for each of the funds. So schemes are going to have a color coding of blue, yellow, or brown that basically tells you whether it is low risk, medium risk, or high risk instrument. So all equity funds, diversified funds, sector funds, index funds, large cap funds, small cap funds will have a brown color code. All fixed maturity plans, gilt funds, etc. will carry as the safest instruments. And then any kind of hybrid products such as monthly income plans, balance funds, unit linked insurance plans, about which we will discuss in one of the subsequent sections, which typically invest in both equity and debt, will be given this yellow rating. So this is low risk, this is kind of moderate risk, and this is considered as high risk. That's a very broad classification. It does not necessarily seem to be the best form of classification that is available, but nevertheless, SEBI does ensure that for investor benefit, they do give a classification like this. So you would see these funds coming up with this kind of a color code. Blue meaning low risk, yellow meaning medium risk or moderate risk, and brown meaning hard risk largely, right? Those are the key risk profiles of funds that are available. Now we turn our attention to something called as a fund fact sheet, right? This is the one of the most important documents that you will find when you're looking at funds. A fact sheet is a monthly document that gives details about funds. This is usually either given by the fund houses, they do it on a monthly basis, and fund rating companies like Value Research Online or Morningstar India. So Morningstar is a global fund rating agency, and if you go to Morningstar's website, you will find these fund fact sheets and comparison of funds and rating of funds and so on and so forth. We will come towards rating of funds in our next section, but at this point of time, we're going to look at primarily what is the fund fact sheet going to look like if we go to, let's say, a website like Morningstar. So let's go to that website and try and check what it looks like. So that's how your Morningstar India website would look like. It's morningstar.in default homepage. Now, when you look at these funds, you could go right at the center and then you could say funds with the best rated mutual funds. These are the 5-star rated funds, 5-star being the best rated funds. Then you have the best YTD return. What is YTD? That's year to date. So 1st January till now. Funds with best 5-year returns. You can compare mutual funds, you can screen mutual funds, you can rank ETFs, and then there are insurance data as well that is there, right? We will look at 5-star rated mutual funds. Let's just click this, right? So you will see that there's a whole host of funds that will get rated as a 5-star rated fund. These are some of the best funds that they say, alphabetically arranged based on the fund house names that are there, right? You could sort them based on YTD return from here. For example, you can click it here and you can get which funds have the best year to date return, or you could just keep them sorted on the name itself, right? Let's click on a fund by Birla Sun Life. So Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund, you will see all options available. You have dividend, you have growth options available, right? So the NAVs are there which are available, and you also see this direct plan. Remember, direct plan versus regular plan. So direct plan, regular plan are also available. When I click on the growth option, it'll take me to a page which will basically talk about this in more detail. It'll give more details about, let's say, Birla Sun Life Frontline Equity Fund. What is the NAV? 180.29. What is the one-day return? 1.5%. Total assets under management are 123.4 billion. That's about 12,000 odd crore. What kind of performance has happened, and so on and so forth. On this page itself, you will see overview, portfolio, detailed portfolio, performance, risk rating, history, and fact sheet. I can click on this fact sheet, and when I click on this fact sheet tab, it opens up a PDF file which will have a lot of details about this fund You can download this one page PDF document and it will tell you that it's an India large cap fund, right? Let's look at what this fact sheet would appear like. So if you look at the fact sheet carefully, this fact sheet would talk about first what is the rating. It's a silver rated fund. Its category index is BSE 100, right? Fund house though uses a benchmark called BSE 200. It says 200 top stocks in India. It's a large cap fund. And what's been the performance year on year of the fund, of the index that the fund chooses, and of the category index of the category on average, what has been the performance, right? So the fund has outperformed both the index and the category. If you had invested certain amount of money here, then that would have been growing at a certain rate over this period. And how would it have done? There are other performance parameters which are available, what kind of returns are available, what kind of index category are available, and what is the percentile rank, which means out of 100 how many are above it and how many are below it, essentially, right? That's what the fund fact sheet first part of the page shows. The second part will talk about some of the interesting terms that we have already discussed. For example, so it talks about alpha. What is alpha? Any return over and above the expected return that you would have from a fund is called as alpha. So it generates alpha, which means if you think the fund should give a return based on its underlying index return of 15%, an alpha of 6.67% means that it has been giving a return of 21.67%. It was expected to give 15%, right? 3-year beta. Then we have a few more ratios. So some of these ratios we will look at and discuss as we go along. We also look at standard deviation, Sharpe ratio, etc., which is available, and we say risk is above average, 5-year risk is average, and 10-year risk is below average for this. What kind of returns we are looking at? 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and then above 1 year it is 3 years annualized. So we see 25.24% return. Plus minus index is 7.84 and category index or category average is 5.54. So effectively how good the fund has performed over a period of time, and then quarterly returns over the year, each of the quarters, how has the fund done in terms of absolute returns. The next page basically talks about how many stocks does it have and what kind of cash does it have, right? And what's the style? It's typically large cap and growth oriented funds. Again, some terms that we will look at in more understanding over a period of time. Then it talks about what kind of equity exposure is there. So there is a giant market cap. These are typically the more than 50,000 crore kind of companies. Then there are large cap companies. Then there are mid cap companies, and there are small cap companies. Average market cap is somewhere around 76,000 crore, essentially. This is in millions. So 76,994 crore is the average market cap that it has, right? Then it has the fourth part, which is what are the top 10 holdings. You have ICICI, HDFC, Axis Bank. What percentage of the portfolio is there? Then you have Reliance, Infosys, L&T, and some of the other funds, that other data points. They also have another fund of their own within this, right? Then total stock holdings, how many stocks are there? 74. Bonds, what is the percentage of top 10 holdings? Gives you some sense of what kind of concentration the fund has, right? And then you have sectoral weightages and you have regional weightages which are available. That's how you would look at the fact sheet of a Morningstar rated fund, right? That's what Morningstar gives us. Now let's go ahead and look at one of the fund houses and see on their websites how do they kind of give the funds. So for this, we'll go to the fund house website for Reliance Mutual Fund. And when you kind of click here, you can actually transact online here and then put in the direct plan here itself. Investor services, under downloads, you will find fact sheets. So you can click on fact sheets, and we can possibly go 1 month back and click on the fact sheet for July 2016. Let's click on this. So that opens up a fact sheet. You will see this is an 80-page document that talks about all the funds that Reliance Mutual Fund has. And you can keep going further and you will look at various funds, and they have been classified as diversified large cap, diversified large cap, diversified large cap, large cap, index fund. then diversified mid and small cap, diversified mid and small cap, diversified mid and small cap, multi-cap fund, multi-cap fund. So all these fund data points are there, right? We will look at this in detail, as well as let's look at another one, which is Motilal Oswal Mutual Fund. And here as well, you can go on the download section under mutual funds. You will see the fact sheets here. Click on the fact sheet. You could click the fact sheet for July, and this is what opens up, right? A letter by the CEO of the company, and then you have the fact sheet for a large cap fund, which is here, for example, and data points that are there. Now, largely, a lot of the data points that we saw in the Morningstar fact sheet are also available here. But of course, fund houses may not reveal everything in terms of where do they stand vis-a-vis category. That's only what a third-party rating agency would give, right? So how do these funds look like? Let's say, for example, Reliance Mid and Small Cap Fund. I've divided into two parts each so that everything comes there. So diversified mid and small cap fund. What is the investment objective of the fund? So to generate long-term capital appreciation and growth opportunities by investing in small cap companies and mid cap companies, correct? Monthly average AUM, assets under management, is about 2,191 crore. Month end AUM is 2,273. How do you find average? You take the average of every day. So roughly about 2,200 crore is the assets under management for this fund. Then who's the fund manager? Sunil Singhania, right? When is the fund available from? Entry load is not applicable. Exit load 1% if redeemed or switched out on or before 1 year from the date of allotment of units. So if you take out the money before 1 year, then you will lose 1% of your return. What are the investments? They are given here. What is the benchmark? BSE small mid cap. Volatility measures, you see them here: beta, standard deviation, Sharpe ratio, and portfolio turnover. We will discuss all these as we go along. And then you will look at the NAVs. So you have a direct plan growth option, you have a dividend plan, you have a growth plan, and you have a direct plan dividend option, right? So direct plan growth option and growth plan, you will see the direct plan NAV is 36.47, whereas the direct regular growth plan is 35.53. The difference of this 1 rupee is effectively coming because of the expense that is happening on account of the fund paying commission to the distributor or intermediary. Then sectoral weightages: finance, industrial capital goods, cement, pharmaceuticals are the top sectors. Some more data point in terms of dividends, and then returns in the last 1 year. Scheme returns 10% June 30 to June 30, 24% over the previous year, and 75% in the year before that. So that's a humongous return. And since inception, if you annualize beginning of the scheme, then this is the return. This is the benchmark returns. And if you had invested 1,000 rupees in the scheme, what would that have become over a period of time, right? Those are the information points available. Let's look at Motilal Oswal's mid cap 30 fund. That's a mid cap fund, obviously. Long-term appreciation by maximum of 30 quality mid-cap companies. Now, the earlier fund house had not put this restriction on how many stocks they would put in, right? Benchmark is NSE Free Float Mid-Cap 100 Index. Who's the fund manager? Mr. Tahir Badshah, 21 years of experience in fund management. Mr. Siddharth Bothra is the co-fund manager, and he has an experience of 15 years, right? Regular growth plan, direct growth plan. Once again, you will see the direct plan. So NAV of the direct growth plan, direct plan is bigger than the regular plan, and that's because of the expenses. What is the monthly AUM? What is the latest AUM is available here as well. What's the dividend history? What's the performance that the stock has given over the last year or so? And what's the return is also available. So 1 year performance, 1 year before that, so June 2014 to 15, June 2015 to 16, and since inception, annualized performance is this one. Industry allocation, finance being the highest one. These are the top stocks that the fund house has in this portfolio, right? So that's another one. Let's look at a debt option as well, right? So there is a fund called Reliance Regular Savings Funds Debt Option, 6,000 crore of AUM. Mr. Prashant Pimple is the fund manager. Then they talk about weighted average yield to maturity. That's 10.13%. You look at all these holdings, they are also rated here. So what is AAA, what is AA, etc. And the rating profile is available in this here, which it says that what percentage is AAA, what is AA plus, what is AA, what is AA minus, and what are rated below that essentially. How much of it is corporate bond, zero coupon bond, commercial paper, etc. is also available. The same portfolio. So this is the right side picture is below this one. So just after this, you should reach here. It talks about the returns and performance measures here as well, and gives us data here as well, right? Uh, so let's now quickly go and do a mini case here. Look at the fund fact sheet downloaded by Reliance Mutual Fund House. Identify any large cap fund, and let's look at these data points. Last 1 year return, assets under management, fund manager, risk parameters, expense ratio, right? Let's see if they give the expense ratio here in the first place. Expense ratio is out of every 100 rupees, how much goes out as expenses every year. Some funds give it, some funds don't. If these guys don't give it, then it will be available in the Morningstar kind of fund ratings. So let's go to our Reliance fact sheet and let's look at a diversified large cap fund. Let's say the Reliance top 200 fund. Correct? We have this available with us. Now let's search for some of the data that we want. We want the fund's assets under management. That's available here, 2,200 odd crore. Fund manager is Sailesh Raj Bhan and Ashwini Kumar. So we have these two data points available. Uh, if we go down further on this, so let's try and probably increase the size a little bit and go down a little bit. What's the last 1 year return as per the data that is available here as on this fact sheet? That's June 2015 to June 2016. Last 1 year scheme returns minus 1.36%, right? Minus 1.36% is the last 1 year return. Let's write some of these data points down. That's minus 1.36%. This is about 2,200 odd crore. This is Sailesh Raj Bhan and Ashwini Kumar. These are the two fund managers. Reliance top 200 fund is what we are looking at. Top 200. And risk parameters and expense ratio. Let's try and see if we can get the risk parameters here. We have beta, standard deviation, Sharpe ratio all given here. That is available to us. And so that data point is available. Right, so all this data is available. We can put all these beta standard deviation numbers as well. Beta is 1.05, standard deviation is 5%. I think this is a monthly standard deviation that they have calculated. And they've given the data of what is it, and Sharpe ratio is given to us. Let's look at expense ratio and let's search for expense ratio here. And then towards the end, they have basically given the expense ratio for all the funds, right? So that's my top 200 fund here on the last this thing, and expense ratio. Look at the difference between the direct plan and the regular plan. So the direct plan gives an expense of 1.18, the regular plan gives an expense of 2.09, almost a 0.9 or almost close to a 1% kind of a difference. That's the data we have. We can plug in the numbers here. Expense ratio is 1.18 for direct and 2.1 for regular. And we can put in the numbers around beta, standard deviation, etc. here in risk parameters. Fine. That's how we go about looking at a fund's details. We could look at the top holdings as well. What is the top stock, and so on and so forth. That's the end of this particular section. As you end, quick question. Look at the various color categories for the risk profile of funds and explain what they are. Look at the Reliance Equity Opportunities Fund and find the following from the fact sheet. Last 1 year return, assets under management, fund manager, risk parameters, and expense ratio. Thank you.